All right. So I guess just to really start off, just basically, how do transcripts work in terms of EPIC? Now, some of you might have had some experience in the past with typing, so please excuse me if I'm reinventing the wheel for you. But the way that it generally works for us is that we will receive an order. Now, I said before we were going to be working on criminal courts today. We receive our criminal work from the VGRS. So VGRS are the Victorian Government Reporting Service, and they just send any work our way that basically they don't have time for, is my understanding, because as you can imagine, they are inundated with lots and lots and lots of work. So what will then happen once we've received that order is that we have a team of monitors, as we call them at EPIC, who are in charge of recording what's going on in the courtroom for us. So in the Melbourne office, just to give you a bit of an idea, they sit in a room all together. They have a vast array of technology, and they're able to actually remotely turn on a recording in a courtroom without even leaving the office. So they're the ones who are in charge of recording what's going on in the courtroom, and they also complete a log for us. Now, there's going to be some more on that as we go on, so I won't go into that too much now, but part of their role is not only to record, but to watch what's going on in the proceeding and keep a running log or a running description of it for the typists. What then happens is, once we've got the recording going, is that our typists take a cut each. And when I say a cut, I mean usually a 10-minute segment of footage. So as a typist, for example, I might come in the morning, be put on a matter and be working with two other typists. As the matter proceeds, each of us will take a 10-minute cut, and generally, if you have a fast typist, that might take them between 30 and 40 minutes, or a bit longer if they're newer to typing, and you just work as a team to produce the transcript throughout the morning. Once all of the cuts have been typed, our TCs, or our transcript coordinators, that Kat was talking about before, then jump in and basically stitch all of those cuts together. They edit it from there. They make sure that all of the formatting is correct. And basically then you have a more or less finished transcript, which is then sent off to whoever needs it. So that's just a very brief sort of outline of how the transcript is produced. And I guess the takeaway message is that in the office we have our monitors in charge of recording and in charge of keeping a log. We have our typists, not only in the office, but all over the country, as you well know. And then we have our TCs, or transcript coordinators, in charge of stitching it all together, making sure it looks neat and polished and professional and pretty. And then they then send it off to the parties who have ordered it. Briefly before, or actually maybe before I move on, does anybody have any questions on that?
No.
No.
No, but fairly basic. So before I mention the VGRS...
So I do have one.
Oh, yes, please, Barb.
You're saying the transcript coordinators prepare and finalise the document. Do they merge it?
They merge it,
Oh,
exactly,
good.
yes. So I should have mentioned before, key vocab for our transcript coordinators, the merge. That's the process of stitching all of those cuts together that I was talking about, and usually we refer to that as merging. So as a typist, obviously, that's something that we don't really have to worry about, but there are a couple of things in our day-to-day routine that make that merge possible and a lot easier for TCs, and we will talk about that as we go on. So more on that soon. Right. Now, before I mention the VGRS, Barb will know a lot more about this than I will because she has an experience with them, but the Victorian Government Reporting Service has produced a manual. And it's a formatting manual, a style manual, and it's more or less our typing Bible because it's the style that we follow, particularly for criminal courts. But the civil work that we do as well is based on and slightly altered from the VGRS manual. So I'm just going to show you my hard copy here. We'll just have a little show and tell. I don't know if you can see that there. So this is the VGRS manual. We also have a computer document version of the VGRS manual available. Has anyone received that yet?
No.
No, that's absolutely fine. So that's something that we can send through to you as a document probably by the end of today, or maybe even over lunchtime might be the way to go. Now, you might have seen it's a hefty tome. Don't panic. the training that we're going to be doing, there's not an emphasis on you learning every single thing in the manual over the next few days. It's more that we're going to be training and giving you inroads into the manual, and then you can go away and do your own sort of, read through and come to us with any questions you might have. But the important thing to know is that VGRS manual is a criminal manual. Now, this is something when I started as a typist that I didn't necessarily understand straight away. It is a manual prepared by the VGRS who are concerned with criminal matters. So everything that you read in there applies to criminal courts. And as we'll talk about a little later on, our civil matters, we follow a very similar style, but it's slightly altered, as you may imagine, because they're civil matters and not criminal, and so they differ a little bit. Takeaway message, criminal manual, but also the Bible that we use for typing at Epic.
You'll use it all the time.
All the time. You'll come to know it like the back of your hand. So it may look big and impenetrable now, but don't worry, you'll definitely get used to it. And we can highlight along the way important sections for you to be starting off with. Now, just because we've been talking about sort of our management hierarchy and the different people that you might need to know as a typist, I might just also mention at the very start the people that you can contact in terms of troubleshooting. Because as we've seen this morning, sometimes there are technical difficulties, sometimes you might have a question in general about typing, especially as you're starting off, or sometimes you might just need to check in. Now, Kat's already mentioned the TCs or transcript coordinators. They are generally your go-to for any concerns. And the way that you would generally contact them is via our messaging system called Spark. Now, has anybody been introduced to Spark by IT yet?
No.
Is that just a
No.
Yes, I had it installed on Friday.
Oh, fantastic. Was that you, Nicole?
No, Diane.
Oh, Diane. Sorry, Diane. Beautiful. So Diane's got Spark, but maybe Nicole and Monique not yet.
I have Spark installed, but I don't have the credentials to log in.
Okay, yeah, no problems. Well, these are definitely things we can iron out. What I might just do is try and share my screen so I can show you basically what it looks like. So just bear with me for a second. And Barb, did you have a question just while I'm doing that?
Just saying, is that Spark? Is that just like an instant messaging?
Exactly. That's it.
Yep,
so it's used by more or less everybody.
Especially when you're running, we'll have to like use
Correct.
with your group.
That's
and
right.
chat with your
That's right. So Nicole, Monique, and Diane, can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, amazing. So what it should end up looking like when you get everything set up, and excuse the millions of other things that I have open on my computer, generally it will look like this little icon here. It's a little flame. And as you can see, I've got it open here. I am online. It's basically just the instant messaging service that we use to get in contact with other typists. So we might be typing something throughout the day and we need to know something in particular. So we might see that another typist is working on this matter with us. We want to get in contact with them. We can do that via Spark. Likewise, all of our transcript coordinators, our TCs, are on Spark. So you can also contact them that way, which is really, really helpful. The other thing to keep in mind is that we can also set you up so that our monitors are a contact that you have on your Spark. And that's really helpful as well. So before we were mentioning that the monitors are the people in charge of recording and keeping a running log or description of what's happening in the matter. They are really great to have a contact with via Spark as well, because sometimes there might be a delay in a matter, for example. So you might be sitting there at your computer going, oh, my matter was supposed to start 15 minutes ago. What's going on? You can check in with your monitor via Spark and see if there's something in particular that you need to know about, or whether they're just doing the standard court thing and they're just running late. So that's Spark. Of course, we can also have email contact with you. And I imagine you might have a couple of emails already, maybe Lauren's email, the Senior Transcript Coordinator, Pat's email, my email now. That's also a good way to troubleshoot. And it's usually via email that you will correspond with IT. Now, we know already IT are indispensable to have in your contact list, and email is the way to contact them. And we'll make sure that you have the relevant email if you don't already. So that's probably the best way to go in terms of troubleshooting. You'll have your copy of the manual. When I started out, I had it on hand at all times, both in hard copy and in electronic copy. But you'll figure out what works best for you. You've also got Spark, our instant messenger, where you can contact the TCs, other typists, and also the monitors. And you have email, your inroad to IT, and also to other people in the business. So I just wanted to get that out there from the start because I find it's very orienting to know who you can contact when you have an issue or if you just want to discuss something. So just moving on, we're going to jump right into now basically the way that we operate day to day as typists working for Epic. So I'm just going to jump into Chrome. I don't know if you guys use Chrome already, but it's pretty much our internet engine of choice. So you can hopefully see there that I've just got up what we call our transcript schedule. Now this is the shared document that you will use every time you work as a typist for Epic. So I will send you the link for this perhaps over lunchtime. For now, I just might show and tell, and then you can have a play on it as the day goes on. So basically, you can see down the bottom where I'm just dragging my mouse that we have a number of tabs. So we call this the transcript schedule. It's updated every day by Kat with the new matters that our typists are going to be working on. So there's a bit of a division on the transcript schedule between running matters, that is matters that are sitting that day and for which transcripts need to be produced more or less that day, and delayed matters. So that, for example, would be our backlog down the bottom, matters that don't need to be sent out that day. So I'll just run you through quickly these tabs. You can see down the bottom we have an SC or Supreme Court tab. These are almost always running matters. We have a County Court tab, likewise generally running matters. We have a Supreme Court Directions, which becomes relevant on Fridays. Don't worry about the specifics of all of these things, I'm just running you through them. Our backlog, this is where almost all of our delayed work is kept. So you can see we've got a whole lot going on in there, and that's usually the case. It tends to be a very busy spreadsheet. So when we don't have running matters going on, or perhaps you might have finished your running matter and you're looking for something else to work on, the backlog is generally where we would go for that delayed work. Likewise, down the bottom, we've got a Magistrates Court tab, not particularly relevant for you at the moment, a Fair Work tab, an AAT tab. Now that's the Administrative Appeals Tribunal that Kat mentioned to you briefly earlier. That's potentially something that you might be working on as time goes on, not so much you, Barb, but that's where our Administrative Appeals Tribunal work is kept. The ROIs and the RO training we don't really need to worry about. We've got our training tab here, which is what we're going to be more or less following this week in terms of just learning how to type different types of things. And then at the end, we actually have a woefully underutilized tab. Now, this is our useful info and links tab, and later when you have the link to the transcript schedule, I really recommend that you jump in here and just have a look at what's there, because it gives you just some prompts in terms of how to save your transcript cut, how to do footers, where to find audio, where to find transcript, just these very basic things that we're going to be running through together over the next few days, but sometimes you just need to jog your memory. We've got some really great links in there as well, which will become more relevant for you as time goes on, but just have a look in there when you get the link a little bit later today, because it is very helpful. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into our training tab to start us off, because this is going to be our window, more or less. Now on the transcript schedule, whether you're in the training tab or whether you're in the County Court or Supreme Court tab, it all more or less looks the same. So what I'm going to do now is just run through how you access the matter that you would be typing on, and just get you a little bit acquainted with the transcript schedule and the matter spreadsheet. So here, for example, we can see that we have a number of sections on the schedule proper. So you can see up the top, we've got a description of what each little field is. So if you're going, oh my goodness, what are they talking about, CC62, you can come up and you can see that it means the location or jurisdiction. So just to run you quickly through it, we have the day of the matter. So this is day one that we're going to be looking at first of all. That means that it's just starting, obviously, but you can see other matters down there that might be up to day 2 or day 3 of a criminal trial, for example. As we move over, we have the date that the matter is sitting. So you can see that this is one from 2017. We have the jurisdiction. So generally, and again, this might be spoon feeding you because this might be something that you know already, but generally CC means county court, SC means Supreme Court. Just very, very briefly, just in case you're not already on top of this, in Victoria we have court hierarchy. So the bare bones of it is that at the bottom we have the Magistrates Court. Above that, our intermediate court is the County Court, and at the top, more or less, is the Supreme. And there are different jurisdictions within those 3 courts, but that's basically how it works: Magistrates, County Court, and Supreme. Have any of you had much exposure to the court system in terms of sort of knowing how it works a little bit?
No.
A little bit. Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. Beautiful. That's actually great. We might be testing Barb's patience as we go along because she's very...
I haven't worked for a year and a half, so go for it.
Oh, you're the best. Wonderful.
I think I need a bit of a memory kick, so keep going.
Fantastic. Well, that's actually really great news, everybody, because it's nice to all start more or less on the same level.
Exactly.
So as I'm going through, if I am using terminology or referring to things that you haven't had any experience with and you're not understanding as I'm going along, please do feel free to flag it with me. And if I don't hear the first time, just shout at me and I'll get there in the end. When I started as a typist, I had almost no knowledge of the court system, which is a little bit shameful. But I'm certain that I knew far, far less than any of you do now. So nothing is too basic as we go along. Please feel free to ask. So before we go up to here, the location or jurisdiction. So we can see that it's the county court, and these numbers actually just refer to the courtroom in the county court. So we can see here that it's sat in County Court 6-2. As we go along, we can see that presiding was Judge Patrick. Move further along, we can see what the matter name is. So here we have DPP against Georgina Matter and Robin Taylor. That is the name of the matter. Now, just while we're on basics, DPP refers to the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, if you were looking at an older matter, you might see R v Georgina Matter and Robin Taylor, you know, if this was, say, 20 years ago or something like that. Now, instead of Director of Public Prosecutions, the R would stand for Regina, which means Queen, or if you had a really, really old matter, it might stand for Rex, which means King. So we've changed now in Victoria. We don't use King and Queen. We use DPP, Director of Public Prosecutions. And what that means is that this is a criminal matter. That's what tells us that we're looking at a criminal matter, because the Director of Public Prosecutions is prosecuting somebody on behalf of the state of Victoria. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. So again, if you're ever a little bit confused about what sort of matter you might be looking at, the DPP or the R there is a very good hint that you're looking at a criminal matter. And as you can see, as Kat mentioned this morning, going down the list, we're using criminal matters this week to train you, just because they tend to be quite fiddly. So it's good to get to grips with them early, and also because there are great inroads into the manual. As we move across, we can see that on the transcript schedule, we're usually given an audio start and finish time. So I'm just going to take you into the County Court tab for a second to give you a bit of a better demonstration of this. So for example, if I were to come to the matters that are running this morning, I can see this first one here. It's day 1, it's today's date, the location is County Court 6-1, Judge Cahill is presiding. We have the matter name, DPP, i.e. it's criminal. And then over here, you can actually see that the matter started today at 10:38. Now, the person in charge of putting in that starting time is actually our TCs, or transcript coordinators. So usually they will be keeping an eye on the matters that they're in charge of. You can see that our transcript coordinator for this task, for this matter, is Beck. So she's been keeping an eye on the logs that the monitors keep. She can see that it started at 10:38, and that's a really good prompt for the typist to focus on the matter. Oh, 10:38, we better jump on it. They also keep a little log in here of when there are short adjournments, so when there's a break in the proceedings, and also as the day goes on, what time the lunch break occurred, and then at the very end of the day, what time the matter wrapped up for good for that day. So that's just how that works there. I'm just going to jump back into the training tab. So just jumping across to the next field, you can see that the monitor is listed for every task. Now, as I was saying before, that is really handy because there might be technical difficulties, there might be a delay, there might be going something on and you might need more information. Again, you could come in and see, for this matter, my monitor is TCM, who is, can I remember the name? I actually can't remember who TCM is, I'm so sorry, but you would have them on Spark, you could get in contact and you could see what was going on. So really good to note there. Knowing who the monitor is also going to become important a bit later on when we learn how to set up the amounts that we're typing. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Over here we have our DTI number, or I'm actually going to change that now to EPIC. So we used to be called DTI, and now we have a much cooler name. We are now EPIC Australia. Every matter that we have is a specific EPIC number, and they all more or look like this. So you can see there's generally 2 numbers, a dash, followed by 4 numbers. The numbers themselves don't really mean anything. It's just an individual number that is given for each new
like an
matter.
invoice number when it...
Kind of, yeah. It's important for us because when we're setting up our cards, the EPIC number will potentially be something that we record. It's just how we keep track of the things that we're doing and how we find them in our system. And I'm going to show you some other places that the EPIC number will pop up as we go on as well. Now, finally, we can see there are a couple of empty fields over here. That's because we're on the training tab. We can see that there's typist, transcript coordinator, and status due date. Excuse me while I just jump back into the County Court tab that we were looking at before. We'll go back to our running matter of DPP and Bradley. You can see over here that after the EPIC number in the typists field, Beck, our transcript coordinator, has allocated particular typists to this running matter. So you can see Janelle, Gwen, and Kerith are on this one. Coordinating. Now, this is really important because when you start your shift, when you start your type, you will open up your transcript schedule, this whole big document with all the tabs, and generally it would be a matter of going through the tabs and seeing if you've been allocated a matter. Now, as at-home typists, this might be a little different for you, and as you go on, you'll receive more information about exactly how you're going to be allocated work, depending on what jurisdiction you'll be working in. But as a general rule, it's good to have a good handle on the different tabs of the transcript schedule. So when you start your shift, you can take the initiative and see if you've been allocated anything straight off. It's also really handy to know who is typing on a matter because just as we were saying with the monitors, we might need to get in contact with one of the other typists. This happens all the time as typists when we have, for example, lots of different spellings of things. We have a way of keeping track of that, but it's also really good to be able to have direct contact with other typists. And of course, other typists might be in a different state. They might be here in the Melbourne office. It's just really good to have that means of communication. Yeah. Now, jumping back down to our training tab, we've now gone through all of those different fields. Right at the end, you can see at the very edge of my screen, we have a link to what we call the matter spreadsheet. So this is a link. I'm just going to follow it now. If you hover your mouse over the link, it then comes up with a link above that you then click on. And it will open up the matter spreadsheet. So I'm just going to sort of run you through now what the spreadsheet involves. Oh, excuse me for just 1 second. We have Pat back in the office. We can see that this is the County Court Crime Transcript Worksheet. We can see our matter name, and this is really important because this is going to inform where we save the typing that we've been doing further down the line. So we can see that our transcript coordinators have just given this the name of matter and anor. That just means and another. Coming down here, our TCs also give us a prompt as to how to save the typing that we're doing. So you can see here that when we're going to be saving our documents later, it's going to be MATT that we save our documents as. It's almost always the first 4 letters of the matter name. So you can see that it's matter and anor, the first 4 letters are MATT. That's going to become important in our saving conventions. Down here we have a link to our matter glossary, which I'm going to take you into in a little while, but that's a really, really important for us, really important resource for us as typists, making sure that we're all working with the other typists on the matter to produce consistent spellings, particularly when it comes to names, you'll find, and just any weird and wonderful vocabulary that we might have as well, that we're all using the same version, but more on that soon. Coming down here, we can see that the monitor for this matter is HC. So that's Hanan in our Melbourne office. Again, really good just to keep an eye on who is monitoring your matter. We come up here and we can see that we have a number of different fields. So we have the day that the matter sat, the date, the location that we saw before, County Court 6-2, judge, and the matter name. Now, this is all taken directly from the transcript schedule, so we're already pretty familiar with that. Down here, I've just highlighted some sections that you see on every matter spreadsheet, but aren't actually very important for us as typists. This is really the domain of the TC or transcript coordinator. So you can see that when they merge or when they stitch all of our cuts together at the end of the typing, they will put in the page numbers of the transcripts that they then send off to the people who've requested them. You can see who's coordinated it. So this one was Lauren. You can see the adjournment times for the day, and you can see when the transcript was finally sent. So again, good to be familiar with what this means, but not very important for us as typists. Moving further down, this is really the area that is very important for us as typists. So you can see here that we have a number of what we call turns or cuts. And what we say when we refer to a turn or a cut is that this is just a 10-minute segment of footage or audio that we then type. So really we deal in cuts as typists. We generally go 1 cut at a time. So you can see that each cut corresponds to a particular time, a particular 10-minute segment. And if we run further down the page to cut J, we can see that sometime between 10:29:55 and 10:40, this matter started. Or actually, sorry, I should say, sometime between 10:39:55 and 10:50, this matter started. So someone's put starting just above that, so the typist can then start typing from when it's actually started. Yeah, sorry, that was a bit convoluted, but so say, for example, if we come back to our schedule, we can see that this matter in the start-finish time started at 10:41. So if you come back here, you can see that the typists have started in that 10:39 to 10:50 segment, i.e. at 10:41. And as you follow the matter down all the way up until the lunch break, it kind of gives you a bit of an idea of what may have happened in that segment. So you can see here that there was a short adjournment at one stage, which means that everybody left the courtroom and went off for, you know, let's be honest, knowing judges and counsel, probably a smoke or, you know, something to eat or a cup of coffee or whatever the case may be. And obviously there's nothing for us to type during short adjournments. That's something there'll be more on later. Really important for us, of course, is what's going on in these cells here. So we've already spoken about the fact that the particular cut corresponds to the particular 10-minute segment of time. Now, what you can see in here is that different typists have allocated themselves for different cuts or different 10-minute segments. So if we have a look at these initials, you can see there's 1, 2, 3 different typists working on this morning period. So we have DZ, who's Dimitri, who works in the office, SA, who is Sharon, and we also have AB down here, who I'm not familiar with. So you can see there's been a team of 3 typists taking cuts together one by one. And the way that it works, of course, is that Dimitri might take a cut at 10:41. Now he's going to be typing that 10 minutes for maybe 3 times as long, so for maybe 30 minutes or 40 minutes if he's speedy. So it makes sense then that Sharon comes in and takes that second cut, and then, well, it turns out that Sharon's particularly speedy and has taken 2, but then potentially AB could come up here and take the third. So it means that, you know, while Dimitri is typing the first cut, we're moving on to the second 10-minute segment, and it's running. So we're running close to the times at which the footage is appearing. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Beautiful. Wonderful. So as you may have picked up already, as typists, we jump in, we put our initials into the cell when we want to take it. And generally what happens is if I'm Dimitri jumping in here and I'm bagsing a cut, I will put my initials on either side of that 10-minute segment. And that means that the TCs and also the other typists know that you are in progress typing that cut. When you finish typing the cut, you will come over here and you'll pop a yes into the cell. Now, this is something that we'll go over again this afternoon, but that's just so you know what you're looking at here. You can see as well down here that Sharon has actually been super speedy, or maybe they didn't do a lot in her cuts, so she didn't have a lot to type. She's actually done 2 cuts. So she's put yes for the first one, and then she's just typed all of the second cut in the same document. So she's put yes in cut L in this cell here. Which means that she's typed 2 cuts in one document and they're both saved under L. Now, again, don't stress too much about that. We're going to go over that again, but that's just so you know what you're looking at. And then you can see over here, there's been a lunch break from sometime around 1 o'clock through to about probably 2:15 in the afternoon. Now, for the criminal courts, generally the way that it works, and again, we'll go over this again later, is that usually there'll be a break, maybe 1:30, and they'll generally resume sometime between 2 and 2:30. So we as typists more or less work around the timing of the court. So if we're going to have our lunch, especially if we're in office, we'll go when we've finished typing our morning cuts, so when all of the morning is typed, and that usually works out to being somewhere between maybe 1:30 and 2:30. So you can see that then the matter has resumed in the afternoon, around about then. It's gone all the way through the afternoon, and then it's adjourned for the day at about sometime between 6:15 and 6:30 or 6:20 and 6:30. So that's what all of this is about here. Now, if we come over to the far right-hand side of the page, we can see some other business over here. This is where our comments as typists will often go, but also we might have communication there from the transcript coordinators. So I'll just run you through what we have here. We can see that there's just a general reminder that appears on all of our criminal matters saying, before you upload your criminal cut, please check that there are no timestamps for witness events. We'll go over that later. Don't worry about what that means for now. But the takeaway is there's general correspondence for us there. So it's good just to take note of everything written in this section. You can see here that as the typists have started typing, they've made a note of the counsel, that is the barristers that are appearing for the different parties in this matter. This is something that doesn't appear on every spreadsheet, but if you're typing the first cut of the day and you're the first person to hear who the barristers are, it's good practice just to pop in here. So you can see we have Mr. Grant for the prosecution, and the typist has made a comment that he'll, in the footage, be standing on the right. We have Mr. Pappas standing in the centre for one of the parties, and then we have Miss O'Brien on the left for the other parties. So when I'm referring to parties and counsel, what I mean is the parties are the people who are involved in the matter. So this is a criminal proceeding. That means one of the parties is always going to be the Director of Public Prosecutions because they are prosecuting on behalf of the state. And then there's going to be the people who are accused. So the other parties here are going to be Georgina Matter and Robin Taylor. And for each of the parties, a barrister will represent them, or will appear for them, as we often say. So we have Mr. Grant, a barrister, appearing on behalf of the prosecution, and Pappas and O'Brien appearing on behalf of the defendants or the accused. As we move further down in here, we can see that someone's written globals. Now, a lot of the time when we're typing, we will think that something is spelt a certain way, and then we'll find out later on that we're nowhere near the spelling. Now, we have a glossary for that, which I'm going to show you soon. But a lot of the time as well, someone will put a little note on the spreadsheet that a global change for a spelling needs to be done in the merge. So in that process of stitching all of the cuts together that the TC undertake. So say, for example, we had been spelling Miss O'Brien like this. I would put a note in here when I find out that it's actually spelt with an R-I-E-N. Miss O'Brien with a Y to Miss O'Brien. And what that means is when the TCs go to merge, they can see that they need to change all of the spellings from O'Brien with a Y to O'Brien with an R-I-E-N. As we come further down, we can see as well that someone's made a little note that we have an indictment document for this, which means that we have a document that will give us lots of name spellings. That's just something good to note. And down here, you can see as well that typists have just left some little notes for each other. So when we were talking before about troubleshooting and means of communication with other typists, with TCs, with monitors, the Matter spreadsheet can also be a good way to get in contact. Every now and again, Spark will go down. So there'll be a technical glitch. Spark won't work and we won't be able to get in contact with the other typists or with the transcript coordinator. As a general rule of thumb, we try and keep the transcript document, the Matter spreadsheet quite clean. But if you really need to, you can leave a little note on here for the other typists or for the other transcript coordinators. Just keep in mind that everybody can see it. The only other thing we need to be aware of on the Matter spreadsheet is right down the bottom of the page. Now you can see here where I'm running my mouse that we have different tabs. Now we have a new tab for every new day of the Matter. So if you see down here, we have a day one training for our purposes, but then you can see a number of other days all the way up to 15. Now criminal trials can run for a long time. So we will have a new tab for every new day that we're typing. If you're ever looking at these and you're thinking, oh, hang on for a second, we're missing days 9 to 13. What happens there? I wouldn't blame you, that is confusing. But the reason that we might be missing some days down the bottom is that sometimes our stenographers might type a day. So all of the little tabs down here have been typed by people like us, by transcribers, but every now and again, for whatever reason, they might need a really quick turnaround on a transcript. And we have, I think, about 15 stenographers in Australia for our particular business. They are people with the modified keyboard who can type more or less in real time. So it's a modified keyboard, so they can do something like 200 words a minute or something crazy like that, which we could never hope to do with our human fingers. So that's why some days might be missing down there. Don't stress out about that. So let me just see where we're up to. Okay, beautiful. So that's the Matter spreadsheet. Now we've still got about 15 minutes. Just to give you a bit of an idea, what we might do is just go through where to access footage, where to access finished transcript, what is a glossary, what is a log, and how our footage program FTR works. And then we might do setting up our Matter, watching a Matter, running through with the transcript after lunch, just to make time for Harsh to get in contact with you about those technical issues. So what I'm going to do now is just show you where we access the footage that we'll be typing from. And before I do that, does anybody have any questions about this Matter spreadsheet that we've just gone through?
No.
No.
No worries at all. As you go on, feel free to jot down questions that occur to you later on. We can always come back to them. You can spark them when it's set up. There'll always be time for questions. So don't stress just because it's a lot of information quite quickly. We'll go over a lot of things. We'll have time to troubleshoot and everything like that. Alrighty. So now, possibly as home typists, this is going to look a little different for you, but Barb, for you, this is exactly what you'll be working with. The way that we access the footage for the matters that we're typing on is via our Quartz Drive. So I think when everything is set up for at-home typists, your setup should look fairly similar to this, but I believe you will drag files from our server into your local server. But that's something that we can give you more information on as everybody becomes properly set up. So for now, I'll just show you how we do it, and then we can troubleshoot from there. Everybody uses the same drive, so that should be fine. Now you can see down here we have a number of different drives. The ones that are really important for us as typists are the Quartz Drive, where we access all of our footage and audio.
That's R, is it?
That's R. And coming down the transcript drive, or the T drive, which is where we access all of the finished typed transcript and also the completed transcript for the day. Of course, for us, it's important to know because that's where we're going to be saving the work that we do. I'm going to start off though with the R drive or the Quartz Drive, where we access the footage. Now, as you can see over here, we have a number of folders. Generally, what we will be looking for is the folder with the day's date on it. Now, this is a little bit different as you go on and start working in jurisdictions like AAT, for example. But for now, courts, criminal matters, we're going to be scrolling down and we can see that for the past couple of months, we've had a new folder for every day where all of the footage for that day is stored. We can see here that today is the 2nd of July, so we've got 2018-0702. We're going to jump in there, and then we can see that we have a folder for every courtroom that we have recorded for the day. Now, I've shown you that because this is how you do it on a day-to-day basis, but what I'm actually going to do now is use an old matter because that's something that we're going to be using in the afternoon. So just excuse me while I jump back into our courts. I'm actually going to go into the 2017 archive. I'm going to come down to the 9th of October. Don't worry about remembering all this because this is just for training purposes. Now, I've jumped into the folder just like the ones that we saw before in today's date, and you can see here that we have a number of files. Now, we refer to these files as FTR files. And the reason that we refer to them that way is that we use FTR as our media player, I suppose, for accessing or watching or listening to the footage or audio. So when you get it set up, no doubt your icon will look a lot like this, just here on my desktop. I've already opened it because my computer is slow and I didn't want to slow us down. So once you click on it, something like this will come up. Now, FTR is called FTR because it stands for, I think, for the record. And this is what we use for almost all of our footage in courts. We do have a number of other media players, but this is the best, and this is the most frequently used. So just to give you some idea, the way that we would load the footage into the player is I would come over here, I would press on the first little FTR icon there. You can see up the top there's an FTR lock. We don't need to worry about that. We just press on the first FTR file. I'm going to highlight all the rest, and then I'm going to drag them across into the FTR player. And you can see that that's just taken a second. Oh, there we go. But we can tell that the files have loaded because on our FTR we can see 9th of October 2017. We can see that this happened in courtroom 6 in County Court 6-2, which we know is correct because this is what we're looking at on the training tab. And then we can see that it started at 10:02:56 a.m. and finished at 11:53:23 a.m. There are start and finish times. Now, when you're dragging all of those files over, don't be alarmed if you see a little Internet Explorer icon in here. You can usually drag that in with no problems and it doesn't affect it at all. But that's going to become very important to us because that's actually our log. I'll come back to that in a second though, because I'd just like to acquaint you with FTR while we're here. Does anybody have any questions about dragging those files into FTR?
No.
No? Amazing.
No.
Do you ever get a, say you block it, do you ever get it saying, okay, number CC62 won't go in it? There's an error and it won't?
Every now and again, we might have a technical glitch. I'm happy to say fairly infrequently when it comes to loading footage. Every now and again, it might not allow us to drag everything into FTR because there might be some files like the FTR lock, for example, in the middle of all the other files. That's fine. Generally, it's just a matter. So say, for example, see this little blank sheet down here. Say that I had highlighted everything and tried to drag it across and it hadn't let me. I could actually come back up and highlight everything except one that I thought was, oh, hang on, problematic. Anyway, highlight it all except that, drag it across.
Yep.
Generally, that will solve the problem. That's a really good question, Barb.
Yep.
Yeah, but apart from that, we generally don't have any problems. So FTR, as you can see over here, it's actually pretty self-explanatory, you'll be happy to know, and it's very intuitive to use. So really as typists, the only thing that we need to worry about is apart from making sure that we've dragged the right thing into FTR, is the start times and the finish times. Now, Barb, have you used this program before? Yeah, fantastic. So we are able to designate what time we'd like to start and finish. So for example, if I jump back in to our Matter spreadsheet, into our training tab, so this is all day one. I've just taken all of the typists who typed it out. Say that I, Katie, wanted to grab cut K. Of course, as we talked about before, I would chuck my initials in here. And then I would see, cut K is from 10:39:55 to 10:50. I'm going to come up to FTR. And in the start time, I'm going to put 10:39:55 a.m. and I'm going to press enter. And now, as you can see, it's actually cut out everything that came before then for me. So I'm going to be starting at that time. And likewise, as you might imagine, I'm going to type 10:50 as my finish time. So now you can see that all I'm going to be hearing is that 10-minute segment or 10-minute cut K that I'm concerned with. And it's really important to do that because otherwise, especially as beginner typists, it's very easy to accidentally type 20 minutes. It is. And that's really something you don't want to be wasting your time doing. So start time and finish time, we just go by whatever we have for our particular cut. You can see up here as well that we have the time that we're up to reflected in this little field up here. So if, for example, I wanted to go to 10:41, which, as we might remember from our schedule, is when this started, I could come up here, go 10:41, I'm going to go 00, and I can see now that my little cursor is up to 10:41, and if I were to press play, I can see that my footage is starting at 10:41. Now you'll see that I just pressed play there using my mouse. Of course, when you have a pedal, you'll be able to press your pedal down and that will start the footage for you, but I don't have a pedal set up in here today. Now, Nicole, Diane and Monique, do you have pedals already?
Yes.
Yes?
I've got one coming, but things
Fantastic.
tend to take a little bit longer getting down to Tassie.
Yes, don't stress.
Yep,
So that's,
I have one.
oh, fantastic, wonderful. So obviously you will be using your pedal to start and stop, rewind, fast forward. And probably I imagine you might all have different pedals, so you'll know better than me as to how to do that. It's just a matter of playing around. But once your foot pedal is set up, it will connect to FTR and allow you to do that. So I'm just going to run through this section over here as well. These are our channels. So right on the side, we have a master volume button or little draggy bit. So you can see you can take it up and down and just have control over the volume. On the other side, we have the speed, the playback speed. So if, for example, Ms. O'Brien was talking at 100 miles a minute, and I could not for the life of me understand what she was saying, I could drag it down to maybe 90% of the speed or 80%, or as I've had sometimes, even down to 20%. It's super slow-mo, but it can be handy for picking up words. So what we have in the middle are the different channels. So you can see there, channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and channel 4. Now, generally in the courts, we will have a different channel corresponding to each different microphone. So generally speaking, channel 1 will be the judge's channel. So we can't see him right now, but I'm just going to drag it along a bit further. There we go. Sorry, it's a lady judge, excuse me. Judge Patrick, yes. So Judge Patrick is down here. She's most likely going to be channel 1. We have a little empty box over here. That's where a witness would sit. And generally in the county court, they are channel 2. And then channels 3 and 4 are generally the barristers over here, or the lawyers that are appearing on behalf of the different parties that we were talking about before. So you can do some really groovy things over here. You can turn off a microphone or turn off a channel. So if I were to click the little circle up the top here, you can see it's now gone red. That means hopefully I'm not going to hear anything the judge says, because say Judge Patrick was talking over all of the lawyers for a good 30 seconds and I couldn't understand what anyone was saying, I might want to turn her off. And now I'm going to be able to better hear what the lawyers are saying on channels 3 and 4. So you can do that with any of the channels. You can turn any of them off. You can turn several off several off at the same time, or you can have them all at once. Likewise, dragging each of the channels up and down allows us to alter the volume of those particular microphones or those particular channels. Now, of course, that's just the recording that we are controlling. Obviously, all of the microphones record at a certain volume level, and that's the monitor's job, not ours. But in terms of controlling what's being recorded, we can control the volume using those channel slidey buttons. So you can see here as well that part of FTR is the footage section, and for most of the matters that you'll start typing on, you will have footage. We do have some jurisdictions where unfortunately we have no picture, we just have audio, but this is a lovely county court. We are also able to minimise this bit up here. So if you come up here, you can see we've got like our escape, our minimise, our display help. The compact view is one that you might like to use. So if you click on that, you can see that your big control tab goes very small. That's also really handy because sometimes, if I get back into it, we might lose our picture for whatever reason. To say that happens, uh-oh, it's gone. A lot of the time, if we go to compact view and we can see this little footage button over here, this sort of little movie reel, if we click that, it brings the footage back. That's just good to know in terms of troubleshooting, because sometimes you might accidentally lose your picture and go, oh my goodness, how do I get it back? Just remember compact view up here is really handy. Also, properties over here is something you might like to know about. If you jump in and go down to viewing options, always on top is really handy to have clicked, because it means if I've clicked that, if I get into say Chrome or into my files or into my email, can you see how FTR is staying on top at all times? That might be really handy for you as you go on, so you don't have to keep losing your picture, but you can be doing other things as well. And over here, we just have some pretty self-explanatory buttons, which as typists, to be honest, once you have your pedal, you're not really going to be concerned with. Okay, so I note the time, it's about 2 minutes to 12. I want to give you plenty of time to have that contact with Harsh, so I'm going to wrap up in a second. We are going to have a little more to get through in the afternoon just because of this time period that we've allocated to Harsh. Sorry, I'll just get back into here. And so before I mentioned that we were going to go over the glossary, working with the glossary, the logs created by the monitors, working with the logs, how to set up a cut, how to save it, how to finish a cut. And also we're going to have a look at what a cut might look like already typed. These are all things we might do after the break. So just to recap, we've gone through the basics this morning. We've gone through sort of the life cycle of a transcript. We've gone through the VGRS or Victorian Government Reporting Service Manual
Mhm.
or our Bible. We've been through this transcript schedule that you can see here under FTR. Through how to access the Matter spreadsheet by clicking on the link over at the right-hand side of the page. We've spoken a little bit about what is on the Matter spreadsheet and a little bit about how it works as a typist. And we've also gone through how to access, if I just get it up again, audio and footage from the courts or R drive, how to drag the files across into FTR. And we've also gone through FTR a little bit, which, as I said before, is our predominant means of playing footage or audio. I might leave it there just for now because it's 11:59. At this stage, are there any quick questions or anything you'd like to flag for me to answer after the break?
No.
No, all good for now? Okay, wonderful. How are you finding it in terms of volume of content? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Are you feeling comfortable? A little bit of both?
No, all good.
All good?
Yep. Good.
Fantastic.
Okay.
I get the wonderful. I get the feeling I'm working with some fast learners this morning, which is such a pleasure. But just keep in mind as well, there's never any shame in asking any questions as we go along the way. So from now, 12 to 12:30, Harsh will be in contact. And then feel free to take until 1:30 for lunch, at which case we'll follow the same procedure as this morning, but hopefully a little smoother, and we'll all connect up again and go through till either 3:30 or 3 o'clock, I think, Monique, you said?
I can do about 3:30.
Okay, yep, no worries at all. So we'll pick up again now. Feel free to disconnect from the call, and thanks so much for your attention. I'll see you soon.
Thanks.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.